Welcome once again to Dialogue on Public Issues. I'm John Chowning with Campbellsville University, thanking our audience for being with us once again. In 2019, the voters of Kentucky will be selecting various constitutional statewide officers, including the office of governor. And beginning with this interview, we have invited all the candidates in the May 21st primary in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party to appear for interview on Dialogue on Public Issues. And today, the first of those interviews is with Mr. Geoff Young, Democratic candidate for governor of Kentucky. Mr. Young, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background.
All right. I was born in Massachusetts, born and raised Jewish. Now I'm a Quaker. I moved to Kentucky in 1982, which would be 37 years ago. Lived in Lexington, Fayette County ever since and love it there. Went to MIT for a bachelor's in economics, UMass Amherst for a master's in mechanical engineering, and after moving to Kentucky, went to UK for another master's in agricultural economics. I'm probably, well, let's see, I worked for the Commonwealth of Kentucky in Frankfort in the State Energy Office.
Okay.
And the mission of that agency is to promote energy efficiency in all sectors of the Kentucky economy and alternative fuels and renewable energy such as solar and hydropower.
Why did you choose to run for governor in 2019? What motivated your candidacy?
Well, I believe that I can do the best job for the people of Kentucky. We've got a platform. My running mate is Josh French, who lives in Elizabethtown. We have 11 planks in our platform, and I hope to mention those as we talk today. But the top one is unions. There has been an attack against the very idea of organized labor and unions, and that attack has intensified over the last few decades. And it's possible that unions are facing extinction because of governmental policies that favor corporations over workers.
Now, what makes you the most qualified candidate, in your opinion, obviously, in the May 21st primary, and then why do you think you would be the best choice to become governor then in the November election?
Well, working in state government for 15 years, I learned how things are done, what works, what doesn't work. The Division of Energy, the State Energy Office, brought a lot of money from the federal government, U.S. Department of Energy, into the Commonwealth in order to engage in public-private partnerships to improve efficiency in the residential sector, the commercial sector, and the industrial sector, as well as transportation. So that is a type of economic development. No one benefits from waste.
Right.
It's a dead loss to society. So if we can use our energy more efficiently, our utility bills will go down, industry will be more likely to locate here because the rates will be lower in the long run, and we can build an economy for the 21st century.
Obviously, you've touched on this next question in part with your response there, but what do you consider to be the most challenging issue confronting the Commonwealth of Kentucky during the next 4 years, the 4 years you would serve as governor, and what proposals, policy proposals, would you put on the table to address that particular issue?
All right, well, aside from helping organized labor regain its strength and influence in our political system, corruption is probably the major problem. Corruption can cripple a state or a country. And so we will try to identify and stamp out corruption regardless of political party. When I talked with you 4 years ago, when I ran for governor in 2015, I had just filed a lawsuit against the Kentucky Democratic Party for rigging that election. I've been fighting them in court. I'm not an attorney, but I've been fighting them in court for the entire 4 years since our last conversation. And that's still going on today. Okay. They're rigging this 2019 primary for governor. One way they're doing it is, if I were to walk into the Democratic Party headquarters in Lexington, the county party headquarters, or the headquarters in Frankfurt for the entire Commonwealth, they would call the police. I'm banned from setting foot in the property. It's outrageous. It's impossible to have a fair primary if one of the candidates can't walk into the party headquarters under fear of arrest and jail, and all the other candidates can go wherever they want. It's a form of corruption.
You mentioned corruption as an issue, obviously. What would you propose then to address that particular issue? And you mentioned that as far as enforcement, party identification or would not matter in the enforcement of the law.
Right, sure.
But would you propose any additional laws or conflicts of interest regulations or anything new?
We've got some really good ethics regulations, but they're not enforced. They're not enforced against certain politicians. It's a case of being too big to indict. So, the people who've threatened me with arrest and have actually called the police on numerous occasions, they shouldn't be holding high positions in the Democratic Party. It's outrageous. If they can do it to me, they can do it to anyone.
How would you address, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of attention being given to the opioid addiction crisis we have in the Commonwealth. The cartels are bringing in more methamphetamines, we're told, by the U.S. Attorney in Louisville, as well as other law enforcement. What would you do as governor to address these problems with opioids in particular, as well as the other drugs that we're facing? Kentucky, that's one of the things that we rank at the top of. In any report on this particular issue, Kentucky's right up there in the top 2 or 3 states.
Right. Well, addiction is a very serious problem for the individual, their family, and the entire society. A person who is addicted to drugs, such as meth, is not really themselves. They're not in their right mind. They're motivated entirely by the drug. So, other countries, such as Portugal, have taken more of a harm reduction approach than a law enforcement approach. I believe that nationwide, the war on drugs has failed. The Geoff Young and Josh French administration will work to legalize all forms of cannabis, both for medicinal and recreational purposes. And that will take a big chunk of the drug scene out of the criminal justice arena. Marijuana can also be used to treat addiction. It can lessen the withdrawal symptoms. So it's a win-win in that sense. It can also help the state budget, as Colorado has shown. When they legalized recreational marijuana, their state budget got a big influx of funds, which they're using to make their state better. There's no reason Kentucky can't do the same thing.
So I hear you're saying more emphasis then on treatment
Yes, definitely.
and less on incarceration.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Incarcerating people for being addicted doesn't help anyone in the long run. I mean, when they come out, they're probably still addicted.
What would you propose to do on the trafficking, the cartels that ship ship the drugs in, and that sort of thing?
I differentiate between some drugs which are relatively less harmful, such as cannabis, and less addictive, and the extremely dangerous, highly addictive drugs. And so there has to still be enforcement against the worst drugs as a kind of a national security issue, not just for Kentucky, but the entire country. If we're on a transportation route for the worst types of drugs, we need to continue to try to get them off the market and to replace them with marijuana and treatment.
Do you think Big Pharma is in part responsible for the opioid problem, the big pharmaceutical companies? We're hearing that a lot. The Attorney General sued, I think the current Attorney General sued some of the big pharmacy and settled for some money and so on. Is that a part of the problem, do you think, Mr. Young, in terms of the opioid? Have the big pharmaceutical companies pushed the opioid, Oxycontin and other, and convinced people that it was not as addictive as it apparently was?
Well, I think they knew it was addictive, and I think that they're a part of the problem. But suing them is not going to accomplish much, because they can the same addictive drugs can be produced illegally, and so I don't think that is a fruitful avenue for a lot of our public resources. I think that the demand has to be addressed. Employment needs to be increased. If people have a good job that they're excited about and pays well, they have less motivation to fall into despair and take drugs. So it's a big and complicated problem, but I think the whole way we're going about it needs to change. We need to look at Portugal, and they've made every drug legal to consume.
Right. How would you approach the ongoing pension solvency issue? We've discussed it for a long time. We've done some reforms. We've had lots of debate about it. It's been a major issue for the last several years. We had a lawsuit about it, throwing out what the legislature did, good or bad.
Right.
The state Supreme Court threw out that particular bill based on procedural, not so much the substance as the procedure used to adopt it. Bottom line, aside from all that, what would a Young administration do to address that continuing issue?
Well, I think the pension issue can't be looked at just by itself. I think Governor Bevin and the Republican leadership in the General Assembly made a mistake when they separated the issue of the pensions from comprehensive tax reform. I'm a Bernie Sanders Democrat.
Okay.
We should tax the rich. They can afford it. They're getting by at a lower tax rate in many cases than the poorest Kentuckians, who have to pay all the sales tax on everything they buy. Kentucky is one of the worst states in terms of taxing the poor, working people, and the middle class. And so if our national government is not going to tackle the issue of income and wealth inequality, we should do it here in Kentucky. Tax the rich.
What form of taxation would you propose then? And that really leads to my next question, which had to do with tax reform.
Okay.
And the continuing issues of budget and revenue challenges facing the Commonwealth, which the pension issue is obviously a part of, but the budget and revenue challenges are even deeper than that, or more complicated than the pension. What tax reforms would you propose as governor?
Well, Governor Mark Dayton of Minnesota, who happened to be a billionaire when he was elected, basically proposed a more progressive income tax structure. He and the legislature there raised the average state taxes on wealthy Minnesotans from about 6% to about 9%. That solved a tremendous number of problems. Minnesota is now regarded as one of the best run states. And having your taxes go up by 3% did not harm the Minnesota millionaires, did not significantly harm them. But it helped the entire state do better. So we need more tax brackets and higher tax rates at the higher income levels. I think we should look seriously at doing away with the sales tax in Kentucky, which no matter how you tweak it, is regressive. It puts a higher burden on the poor and average people. If we could eliminate the sales tax, increase the tax rates on the very richest Kentuckians, and consider also a wealth tax. Now that probably should be done nationwide, but we can do something in Kentucky also. That would make the whole society better, because a society where there are very rich and very poor is just a worse society to live in. There are a host of problems that come along with wealth and income
wealth
inequality.
Tax is that what we might know otherwise as inheritance tax, or
that's a part of it.
Okay, explain it further.
Well, property taxes are a wealth tax.
Okay.
So inheritance taxes and property taxes should be emphasized more.
You would phase out sales tax or consumption taxes, or
right, in general. That would be the direction to go in.
Right.
I'm not sure we can achieve phasing out the sales tax completely in the first 4 years, but we'll see.
Right, and then raise income tax rates, state income tax rate on the
wealthy,
wealthy.
on the richest Kentuckians.
Okay.
Right.
Very, very good. Thank you. Kentucky has major infrastructure needs, not just Kentucky, the entire nation. Here in our immediate region, we have 2 highway projects. We talk to everybody that comes. Every candidate that sits at this table will hear about continuation and completion of the Heartland Parkway, or bypass around Campbellsville. The Heartland Parkway is connecting the Bluegrass Parkway and the Cumberland Parkway, upgrading Highway 210 from Campbellsville to Hodgenville. Another project that's important to this particular part of the state for connectivity. And I'm not asking you that you're going to commit to building these projects by 2023, although if you want to, we'd be glad. But my question is, are you going to be supportive of those kinds of projects in Kentucky, and what can we do to enhance or increase funding for infrastructure needs that our roads are falling apart.
Right.
Our bridges are falling in. I think we would all agree. You can hardly drive anywhere in this state without hitting a pothole, just driving down the road.
Right. Well, comprehensive tax reform solves that problem too. When I worked in Frankfurt for 15 years, I carpooled with some people who worked in the transportation cabinet. I've spoken to groups of Kentucky transportation engineers, and there is in place a a complicated system for deciding which roads get worked on at what time, and I believe the purpose of that system is to get politics out of it, to make it an economic decision based on what is good for the economy of each particular region and the Commonwealth as a whole. And so if the system is good, if it's working well, see, I don't know how well it's working at this point. If it's working well, we should simply implement it as it's designed to do, and make transportation road decisions based on need and cost-benefit analysis. If there is corruption in the transportation cabinet, which again I don't know, that has to be rooted out.
The gas tax is currently the primary funding, is it not, I think, for road projects?
Right.
Is that a good mechanism for funding highway projects?
I don't think so. I think it should all come from one pot. The gas tax, I think at times when gasoline prices are low, I think the gas tax actually should be raised. And when high gasoline prices are hurting Kentuckians, that's when it should be lowered. Right now, the reverse is the case. As the price goes up, the tax revenue goes up. So, I'm not sure why it was funded that way. It should probably all go into one pot.
Okay. Kentucky is increasingly urban, but still very rural in comparison to much of the country. And I'm certainly not asking a question of pitting urban Kentucky against rural Kentucky, but urban Kentucky has done reasonably well in competing. If you look at the statistics, not all of urban Kentucky, but much of it has kept up fairly well with the nation. Rural Kentucky is lagging further and further and further behind. What can a Governor Young and Lieutenant Governor French do to help bump rural Kentucky forward? Not at the expense of urban Kentucky, but simply to be a voice for once to hear a governor in Frankfort talking about rural Kentucky, advocating for rural Kentucky.
Well, growing marijuana could be a boon. Growing industrial hemp could help rural Kentucky. But in a larger sense, reducing corruption, strengthening the labor movement also can help rural Kentucky. Things that benefit the whole state will benefit all parts of it. So if there are counties where corruption is extensive and prevalent, that needs to be addressed.
Okay. What's your vision for Kentucky overall?
My vision for Kentucky is of a more cooperative Commonwealth, where the rich are not pitted against the poor in the legislature, where special interests, for example, utility corporations, which have been fighting against renewable energy, when lobbyists have less influence, lobbyists, for any special interest. What we have with the sales tax is a situation over the decades where special interests have lobbied for exemptions, and we now have a patchwork that's more holes than fabric. So that kind of thing damages the whole Commonwealth. My vision is for a cooperative Commonwealth where worker-owned co-ops are more prevalent, where larger corporations deal more fairly with their workers, and workers have some bargaining power, which is often not the case now, where decisions are made for the benefit of all rather than for short-term, 3-month, 6-month profit statements.
Okay. anyone wants to find out more information about
right.
your candidacy, what can they do? Where can they go?
Our website is Young for Kentucky, YOUNG, number 4, KY.com, Young for Kentucky. You can find all 11 planks of our platform. We didn't talk about abortion. I don't know if we have time or if you're
We're down to
running.
about 30 seconds.
Okay, well, on the abortion issue, the Right to Life movement and the Republican Party have been trying to make all abortions illegal since 1973. That is a strategy that's doomed to fail. Countries that have done that, the abortion rate goes up. So the Right to Life movement is wrong on their central issue. Planned Parenthood and Democrats are the true pro-life Americans.
Any final comments you'd like to make? If you want to you have about 30 seconds to make a closing appeal to the voters.
Okay, thank you. The Democratic field this year for the governor's race has divided itself in two. Rocky Adkins and I are honest, strong, progressive Democrats. Well, Rocky's a little more conservative or moderate. The other two, Adam Edlin and Andy Beshear, are crooks. They routinely engage in rigging Democratic Party primaries, and they're doing it again. They did it in 2015, they did it in 2018 in Central Kentucky in the 6th District. What they do is they avoid debates, they prevent me from even talking to the public. There was a meeting last Saturday in Frankfurt. The 3 other Democrats got to speak. I couldn't enter the party headquarters under threat of arrest and jail. That's election fraud, and so Beshear and Edlin would be worse than Matt Bevin.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Travel safely. This is John Chowning with Democratic candidate for Governor Geoff Young, thanking you, and we'll be interviewing the other candidates who have been invited. All will be appearing, we hope, and expect to have between now and May 21st. Thank you for watching, and please vote on May 21st. This is John Chowning. Thank you.